You know, if you just pick any day on the calendar, any day at all, it might seem pretty ordinary, but I guarantee you it's packed with history. Inventions, revolutions, tragedies, you name it. So today we're going to peel back the layers of just one of those dates, November 3rd, to see all the completely different worlds that have existed on this single day throughout time.
So let me ask you this. What do a sandwich, a dog that went to space, and a plate of buffalo wings all have in common? I know, it sounds like the start of a really weird joke, right? But believe it or not, there's a real answer that connects all of them. And that answer is a single date, November 3rd.
And that's exactly where we're going to start. We'll kick things off by looking at November 3rd as a day of some pretty incredible firsts. Everything from iconic foods and cultural milestones to, spaceships.
All right, first up, let's talk about something you've probably eaten like this week. November 3rd happens to be the birthday of John Montagu, who was the 4th Earl of Sandwich. And the story goes that he was so into a card game, he didn't want to stop for a proper meal. So what was his solution? He asked for some meat between 2 slices of bread. And just like that, the sandwich was born. A totally brilliant way to eat without getting your cards all greasy.
Okay, stick with that same date, November 3rd, but jump to 1911. Another icon comes into the world. This time, it's a team-up between a race car driver, Louis Chevrolet, and an industrialist named William C. Durant. Together, they create what would become one of the most famous car brands in America, a very different kind of first for November 3rd.
Now, let's fast forward to 1964. We're at the Anchor Bar in Buffalo, New York. The owner, Teresa Bellissimo, supposedly created the very first buffalo wings, kinda by accident. What started as just a late-night snack for her son and his friends is now, a global obsession. And it all goes back to a kitchen experiment on November 3rd.
November 3rd is also a big day for pop culture. Back in 1956, The Wizard of Oz was shown on television for the very first time. And that single broadcast is a huge part of what turned the movie into the absolute icon it is today, bringing it into the homes of generations of families year after year.
But not all the firsts on this day are so lighthearted. On November 3rd, 1957, right in the heat of the space race, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 2, and on board was the very first living being to ever orbit our planet, a little dog named Laika.
So tragically, Laika didn't make it back. It was a one-way trip from the very beginning. But her sacrifice was just a monumental step forward. The data from her flight was absolutely crucial, and it's what helped pave the way for humans to eventually go into space. It's a somber, but a really, really important first for November 3rd.
But November 3rd isn't just about sandwiches and spaceships. It's also a day that has fundamentally reshaped the world map, a day that's seen the birth of new nations and the total collapse of old empires.
This right here really captures the crazy contradictions of this one day. So on November 3rd, 1903, Panama declares its independence from Colombia, and a new nation is born. But then, on that exact same calendar day, just 15 years later in 1918, the incredibly powerful Austro-Hungarian Empire signs an armistice that basically marks its end. One day, 2 huge events, one of creation and one of total dissolution.
And that armistice, it wasn't just a ceasefire, not even close. As you can see from this map, it was the trigger for a complete overhaul of the entire European continent. The treaties that came after World War I literally took apart old empires and carved out brand new countries from the land they used to control.
And if you want to understand the sheer scale of that collapse, just look at these numbers. It's staggering. Austria lost 72% of its territory and 77% of its population. Hungary lost 71% of its territory. This wasn't just a political change, it was the complete dismemberment of a massive European power.
The history of November 3rd isn't just about distant empires, though. It also holds a much more recent and much more raw memory of violent political upheaval. So now, we need to turn our attention to Bangladesh in 1975, a story of coups, counter-coups, and just immense tragedy.
To really get what happened, you have to follow this incredibly rapid, chaotic chain of events. It all kicks off in August 1975, when the nation's founding president is assassinated. Then, on November 3rd, a counter-coup is launched to get rid of the assassins. But on that exact same day, something horrific happens inside Dhaka Central Jail. And then, just 4 days later, another coup changes everything all over again. It was a time of just intense, violent, and dizzying instability.
The central tragedy of November 3rd, 1975 is what's known as the jail killing.
4 of the nation's highest-ranking leaders who had been jailed after the August coup were assassinated right in their cells. Their names were Syed Nazrul Islam, Tajuddin Ahmad, Muhammad Mansour Ali, and Abul Hasnat Muhammad Kamaruzaman. These men were foundational figures in the country's fight for independence.
In Bangladesh, this event is often called the indelible shame. And it's important to understand this wasn't random violence. It was a cold, calculated move to completely wipe out the leadership of the Awami League Party to make sure they could never return to power. It left a really deep and lasting scar on the nation.
Okay, so November 3rd can be a day of fun facts, a day of huge geopolitical shifts, and a day of profound personal tragedy. And all of that raises a pretty big question. How do we even remember a day that has so many different meanings? Well, the answer seems to depend entirely on where you are in the world.
I mean, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? In Japan, November 3rd is Bunka no Hi, or Culture Day. It's a national holiday celebrating art and learning. But in Bangladesh, it's Jail Killing Day, a deeply somber day of mourning for the leaders who were lost. The exact same date, but 2 completely opposite national moods.
And you know, this whole theme of remembrance isn't just about November 3rd. Right around this time, on November 1st and 2nd, many cultures, especially in Mexico, observe Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. And it's this incredibly vibrant celebration that honors the dead not with sadness, but with joy and life, reminding us that there are so many different ways to grapple with memory and loss.
So one single day on the calendar, it can hold the invention of a snack and the collapse of an empire. It can be a day of nationwide celebration for one country and a day of profound tragedy for another. It holds beginnings and ends, joy and sorrow all at once. So how does knowing this incredible density of human experience all packed into one 24-hour box, change the way we look at a simple date on the calendar? It's definitely something to think about.